Okay, so good evening, everyone. First off, a big thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to somebody who has been explained well by my needs, but at the same time, I don't claim myself as making big or anything like that in any fashion. So I'm just a normal guy who has persevered through different challenges and reached where I wanted to reach, and still the journey hasn't ended yet. There is more to do and more to learn. So as I was saying previously, I have two passions in life. The first is helping people. And it's really important for me because at the moment I help people, I just receive a great sense of satisfaction. And the second is learning. And learning for me is equally important because without learning, I definitely do not do very well. I mean, if I'm not learning, I just feel that I'm dead. So I hope you are able to get something out of this and in the next hour or so, and I can go over a little bit if you guys have more questions. And I'm going to start to share a presentation that I built for this team here. So bear with me for a second. Are you guys able to see my screen? Just raise, one of you raise your hand so that way I'm clear that, yeah, okay, got it. So you are able to see my screen. So I'm also personally looking to learn from all of you, from all your questions and comments, because those are invaluable to me. So as Arsha mentioned and the DSP community mentioned, I'm a managing director at Zscaler. I lead the mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, and private equity practice there. And I happen to be a Big Four alum as well, and I've spent a large part of my career in Big Four firms, notably PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte. So I'll share some stories with you. And my goal here, and here's the agenda for all of you to know. So it just did the introduction and kickoff, and we're gonna do some personal and professional background details. And I want to share with you 10 life and career lessons that I have learned throughout my journey here in the United States and even preceding that, and hope those are helpful for you. And we're going to get into open Q&A, and then finally we'll close this session. So does it sound good, guys? Awesome. It becomes really difficult to have an interactive session in an online world, but we'll try. So as I said, my goal is to share a few short stories from my life and career and then open up for free-form Q&A. So let me just start off with this. I'll take you back to my memory lane when I grew up. These are my grandparents. They were refugees and they came to India from the now Pakistan side of the border during the India-Pakistan partition in 1947, for all those who have been aware of that and studied history. They were one of the 10 million people who lost everything in this largest human migration in history. Lost everything means literally everything. They didn't have food to eat. They didn't have a job. They didn't have a place to live. And they just came over on the other side, thinking that they're going to be able to restart their life in some shape and form. So I grew up hearing stories of the loss of property, loss of loved ones, and struggles as they rebuilt their life in the new country. For 31 long years, they persevered with all the family responsibilities and extended family responsibilities that took precedence for them, and they took it with great responsibility and care. And after 31 years, on this picture, you see my grandfather standing tall in front of the home that he built. That was his dream. That was his dream, to build a home for himself, for his family, because for 31 years, he couldn't afford to build a home. And that's when he's standing so proud and out there in front of our home where I grew up, where my siblings grew up. That's what my home is, or still is. I learned a lot from my grandparents, and I like to highlight the three things that laid the foundation for my life. The first one is principles in life matter. Know what you stand for. Honesty, integrity, hard work, and caring for others was core in the family. So I imbibed that. I took that as something that was important. So principles in life matter. The second thing that I learned was that you have to give respect to get respect. I can say that my grandparents were the most respected in our entire family because they gave everyone from the bottom of their heart. Even if they didn't have enough for themselves, they didn't care. They just wanted to provide for somebody and provided with all the attention, care, love. They never once complained about what they don't have. They always celebrated what they have. So that was another life lesson that I learned very early on. The third one was there is no substitute to hard work and education. They worked really hard to create a life that we became beneficiaries of. So I thank them for the bottom of my heart today, for where I am and what I'm doing today. And I have some heaviness in my voice right now because I have great respect for them. They created who I am today. So I just really feel they were around with us, but nobody lives forever. So that's the way life goes. And a lot of you asked about my background. So here it is. I grew up in a small, sleepy town called Township of Bhilai. It was a steel township. Steel plant was the only big industry out there. It was in central India. You could see somewhere here a dot on the map of India, which nobody knew about. Some people read it in the geography books, but they quickly forgotten about it. So that was where I grew up. This township was so far removed from any major city. It was a microcosm in itself, a cosmopolitan melting pot of people from all states of India and all walks of life, backgrounds, languages, and cuisines. So I grew up in a lot of diversity. I would also call it the safest place on earth. So as we hear, right, like, I mean, coming in America, when you see like there are tornadoes, there are snowstorms, there are mountains, there are oceans, right? Like, I mean, something is happening all the time from a weather event. There was nothing that happened there. About a couple of months of rain that created some havoc, but nothing major. And the rest of the time it was pretty quiet. There was no, it was, I would call it the safest place on earth. So I went to study engineering, and that's the arrow on the top, right? So I went to study engineering at a school in northern India, a city by the name of Gwalior, and which was a princely state with lots of forts and royal culture, and studied computer science, which I realized in my second year that it's not for me. I don't like coding. I don't like sitting in front of a computer and just coding. And no offense for all those who are passionate about it, but it was just not meant for me. And I went straight to business school. And from there on, I joined Tata Motors, which is the flagship company of the Tata Group, which is the $100+ billion group conglomerate in India. And for those who do not know, Tata Motors also own Jaguar and Land Rover brands, which they acquired about maybe a decade back or even earlier than that. But that was, I was starting to get comfortable. And then I remembered that my mother had a dream and I had a dream. And are we not fulfilling that dream? And the dream was to come to the US and live a different kind of life. And so I followed my dream, came to BYU, got my second business degree, and then worked at several companies that we'll talk about. And that's not what defines me. I just want to be very clear. I know you guys are really intrigued and enthusiastic about asking questions about career, which we're going to address. I'm not going to dodge those, but that's not what defines you or defines anybody. So that's what we want to talk about as to what defines you. And as I said, currently I lead the M&A and divestitures and private equity practice at Zscaler, which is a cybersecurity company. I work in the office of the CEO, work very closely with our CEO at the moment, Jay Chaudhary, is also an Indian billionaire who has created several companies of his own. You should study his own story as well, with this very remarkable story that he has. Something about my family, these are part of my values, so I do want to put it out there. My beautiful wife and my kids and parents and aunts and uncles, and we have a dog by the name of Taffy. You see the picture on the left-hand side. And we have 3 birds. We have only got pictures of 2 birds, and the third bird is missing. And we also have a fish, which I couldn't find a picture of. And so this is an important part of our family. We have a pretty diverse flora and fauna in our family. And these are some of the pictures that you see. And you will learn about all of these people, how they contributed, what they did, in all my stories that I'm going to tell from here on. But I just want to go back on values. And values are a foundation stone for your personal and professional development and success in the future. So you should define your values early on. So I just want to pause here for a second, and then we can start off with 10 life lessons. And I'll share a few stories from my life and career, which would help you get answers to the questions that you submitted, and also would be able to kind of relate to who I am and what we have done in the span of like last 20 plus years and even more. Does that sound good?
I unmuted so you guys can like talk.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So the first thing is that you're not seeing this for the first time. If you can dream it, you can do it. Walt Disney, I did not know Walt Disney growing up, who he was as a person and what he created. I did watch Mickey Mouse when I was growing up, or Donald Duck and all those various shows once in a week sometime, but I did not know who Walt Disney was, but I discovered him when I came to America and understood how big a person he is. So let me start off with a brief story, about my mother. My mother grew up in a business family where education was not a priority, but she did graduate from a very premium college back in New Delhi. She got married, she came to Bhilai. It was an environment that was polar opposite of how she grew up. Education was the focus. From the money background to the lower middle class background, it was quite an adjustment for her. It was quite an adjustment, but she quickly embraced and learned the playbook as to what these people are doing, what's happening here in this small, sleepy town of Bhilai. What she saw was three things: educate the kids, send them to top engineering or medical schools, and boom, they make a life of their own. And she was just fascinated by that idea of this is the art of the possible. And even before her kids were born, she started to dream. She started to dream that someday she would be able to run this playbook in her family and have her kids succeed. And that was where it all started. Around the same time, my aunt, whom you may have noticed in the picture, and I did not point her out, she was going to medical school. And my dad was an engineer, and her sister, my aunt, was going to the medical school. And that's when my mother started to dream of her kids as well, sending them to top universities. And from there on, they will make a life of their own and they will reach where they will have to reach. That was the 70s. The 70s, the decade of 70s. She did not know how, but she had the conviction that her children will one day succeed. Growing up, I still remember she found inspiration everywhere. She found inspiration from anyone, anywhere, and brought the story home. She told us stories of people who are succeeding. She told her people, somebody's son and somebody's daughter, somebody's aunt, uncle. I mean, they have achieved this, achieved that. This is the place that they have been to, etc. Somebody's son went to America today. Somebody's son went to this place today. Somebody's son. So she brought those stories as we were growing up. There were two things that we could do with those stories. Either we could discard them, ignore them, but I embraced it. I embraced those stories. I'm like, you know what? You want this? We'll give you this, and we will make it happen. So I took a very, very bold step. I said, you know what, we are going to make it happen. So continue to hone the craft of academics was the only thing that we had at that moment. But the competition was really high. To get into a prestigious engineering college, like an Indian Institute of Technology or some of those colleges, it was like a 1 in 100,000 person chance that you would be able to get in. Very, very competitive. There were limited seats and there was so much of competition all across India. But I kind of gave up my 4 years of high school years to study for that. But what happened? I did not qualify. 4 years. I gave 4 years. I did not qualify. And that brings to my second point. Even if you fall flat on your face, you're still moving forward. I fell flat on my face back in 1995. That's when I graduated from high school. I couldn't qualify. And I was like, okay, life is over. The dream is over. That was it. That's when I embraced this whole saying. And the choice was mine. I could either spiral into depression, grief, loss, failure, whatever you call it, or I can pick up the next best option. And I believe in that. What's the next best option? You have to move forward. So I picked up the next best option. It was not as prestigious an engineering school as I was supposed to or dreamt of. But I said, okay, I'm going to take this. And remember, in life, you're going to find this fork. Not only in life, every day when you wake up, this fork in the road happens over 100 times a day. And it's the choices that you make that will determine the shape of your life. So this was a big decision. I mean, I could have stopped. I could have taken a break. I could have written the exam a year later, but I chose to move forward. I said, I want to move forward. I don't want to go back. So that was the decision that I took. So one such fork, speaking of fork, one such fork happened when I was in engineering school. And I had an option as I was graduating out of engineering school. I had an option to join Indian Air Force as a flying officer. And it was a pretty tough nut to crack. I mean, getting into defense services as a flying officer was not that easy. That was the moment when I regained my confidence when I got selected. But I thought of myself, I said, okay, here it is, an option of defense services where I'm supposed to be challenging, but comfortable. I'll live a comfortable life. I thought about it a lot. Should I go for this? And at the same time, I had the other option, which is to get a business degree. I chose the latter, and I don't regret it today. I chose the latter. I said, you know what, let me just go and take a business degree. I was getting into a top 10 business school. Why not? So always ask yourself, why not? That's really important. That brings me to the third or fourth point here. Success is a great deodorant. It takes away all your past smells. So I was thinking about it that I was a failure a few years ago. I couldn't even qualify. And now here I am with entering into the top 10 business schools. I was on the top of the world. But things do not last forever. 2 years later, in 2001, I graduated from the business school. And most of you are young enough that you may not have seen the 2001 dot-com crash, but you may have heard about it, read about it. I was the first person to get placed on campus of my business school and the highest paid person on campus. And 7 days before I was supposed to graduate, my job offer got revoked. And the reason being, we could not afford you anymore. Dot-com bubble burst. That I was the first victim of that. So I'm like, here I am. It's a 1995 again, repeating itself 6 years later. I'm again a failure. I do not know where to go now. So that was the situation that happened in 2001. But I connected with a few of my professors and connected with a few of the companies that came on campus previously, and then ultimately landed on a job in Tata Motors, as I said, in sales. It was not my first choice, but it taught me a lot. While working at Tata Motors, I was getting more and more comfortable, getting paid well, had the power, had the territory, I was in sales on top of the world, and whining and dining with the who's of the entire, I would say, brass of Tatas, and all that stuff was going on. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty lucrative. I should continue. But then one thing kept bothering me. If it's still in your mind, it is worth taking a risk. And I thought about it. Is it still? I just remembered the dream which I grew up with, and I did not want to give up. So I decided to take a risk. All the savings that I had, I asked my dad, would you pay for my US education again? He said, no, I won't, because I've already paid for your education. I don't have any more money left for you to send you to the United States, but I will help you in the way that I want me to help you. You can borrow some money and you can go. I said, okay, here is what I have. Let's see what you can give to me. Let's make it happen. And then in 2003, I landed in the United States. So if it's still in your mind, it is worth taking a risk. You should do that ever. I took the plunge and got to Brigham Young University. For all those who know, it's a Mormon school typically white school, and 99% of the folks are Mormons, and I was the only diversity out there. So I reached America in 2003, and all I saw was opportunity. That's all I saw. I did not see the struggle. I did not see why I should not be able to do that. I always ask the question, why not me? I mean, I should be there. The next day I landed, I was knocking on the professor's doors, asking for some job, whatever they could give me. You want me to, photocopy papers? I'll do that for you. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Ultimately, a professor of mine said, okay, I have 10 hours worth of work for you. I said, at what rate? He said, $10, I'll pay you $10. I said, okay, that's $100 a week. Let's do that. So this is how I started in America. I got the job in the first few days. Then I was walking around on the campus and I saw a poster. It said, meet the firms. So I stopped a fellow student of mine. I asked her, I said, hey, what is this meet the firms? And she explained to me that this is a general, she was senior to me. And so she has been there and done that. And she was like, these big four firms and some of the other firms come and meet with the students at the onset of the class, starting of the class. And I said, okay, which firms are you talking about? And she explained to me, you do not know who are these big four firms? Everybody knows about them. It's Deloitte, it's Ernst & Young, it's PwC, it's KPMG. Then I pretended, oh, I know all about these, but I did not know anything about those. I went back, researched. 3 days later, this event was happening on September 3rd. I had a white shirt, a jacket, a tie, and a couple of resume copies. I just went and entered the room, met with people, followed up. 5 weeks later, I had internship offers from PwC, EY, and KPMG. Sorry, Deloitte, EY, and KPMG, not PwC. So what I learned from there is that just showing up is half the battle. You have to show up. You have to be there. If you're not there, you're missing out. The FOMO kind of acronyms came later, but I mean, if you're not showing up is half the battle. And I showed up and I won. I was on top of the world. I did not know which one to accept. So I asked an undergrad friend of mine. She was like visiting me in the apartment. She was also a fellow Indian. We used to have some cooking together, and all of the folks who were fellow Indians were doing that. And I asked her, hey, I have this offer from these 3 firms. And she said, you know what? Ernst & Young and Deloitte sound cool. I do not know about KPMG. I said, which one is the cooler one? She said, I think I like Deloitte. I said, okay, let's pick Deloitte. I did not know anything about it in terms of why I'm picking them up. And somebody told me you cannot go wrong with any of the 4. You can join any one of those. So I did my internship there. And I realized that, okay, this is a very boring job. I do not like this. This is a enterprise risk and internal audit kind of job. And I did not like it. I realized that, you know what, it's okay. I need a visa sponsorship. I'll take it. So I joined Deloitte in 2005 full-time. I got the full-time job offer. And I did join there. And ultimately, I realized that at the same time, I read a book by Keith Ferrazzi. It said, never eat alone. And I was fascinated by it. I said, you know what, this is networking to the level he's teaching us the practical techniques and tips as to how to network. And I was really fascinated by it. I said, you know what, let me just apply and let me check how powerful is this book and learnings from this book. I started to network with the Deloitte consulting side of the business. I started to email partners. I started to email people, setting up informational interviews. And then, boom, they invited me for an interview, a formal interview. And I flew to Atlanta for the formal interview. I think I did okay. I was not sure where I stand. And I got a call, hey, we're going to want to make an offer. And it was an internal transfer, but they still had to follow the procedures. And when I heard the offer, it was a 20% pay jump for me. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I never expected that this soon. So I quickly accepted that offer. I moved to the consulting side of the business. So And as I got out of Deloitte, I mean, because of the personal conundrum that I'm going to talk about, but what I want you to take away is that your network is your net worth. So it's really important for you to network with people. And I joined a company called HCL on the heels of the financial crisis, because I was getting worried about the consulting business. It was dropping, and there was any day that somebody is going to give me a pink slip or give our group a pink slip because our work was not there. So I got a job in HCL, and I'm really thankful for that during the peak of the financial crisis when everybody was losing their job. And guess what? How did I get that job? I got it through networking. I talked to a few colleagues of mine, a few friends of mine, and then ultimately they connected me to the right people, and boom, I had that job. So that is my story in terms of coming to HCL. But when I got to HCL, I realized that, hey, look, I mean, again, this onshore, offshore, and this travel, I was handling Brazil, I was handling Canada, the travel was getting too much. So I said that, you know what, let me just, and I was running out of time on my H-1B, which is a work visa that you are on when you are an immigrant. So I aggressively started to pursue other companies, and I got offers from PwC, KPMG, and VMware, and HP at that time. Yeah. So I was just thinking about where to go. I decided to go to PwC because I thought that they were paying me really well. They were promising me to keep me local. They were giving me the right responsibilities to build the team, etc. So I thought, I mean, we cannot go wrong with any of the big four firms. And again, things start to come into my mind. The couple of other things that I would like to mention is, if you don't try, the result is always failure, right? So at HCL, I could have been like, okay, this is fine, this is good for now, and I could continue, but I tried, and then I got to a better opportunity, and I really am thankful for that. At PwC, I met with a lot of mentors. The mentors were really a person, any person. It could be in your home, it could be in your neighborhood, it could be in your office, it could be your colleague, it could be your professor, it could be a friend, it could be some unknown person, but they really believe in you. And I found a lot of people who believed in me at PwC. So I received some great mentorship. But I was at the time, and I had a great career at PwC for 7 years, but I was torn between professional success and family success. And my wife, who is a very level-headed person, she repeatedly reminded me of a quote that we both learned at BYU, which said, "No amount of success at work makes up for failure at home." And that was hitting me every day. I felt that I was a failure at home. And remember, throughout my journey, what you have listened, failure is not good for me. I don't like failure. So I did not want to be a failure at home. So I said, okay, let me take up an opportunity in the corporate world and do something at Salesforce. From somebody at PwC to nobody at Salesforce was a very sinking feeling. It was a very humbling experience. Everybody knew you in the previous company, and then all of a sudden nobody knows you. You have to start all over again. And I had to make things happen to produce results, but a couple of things stayed with me, which was my skills, my determination, and relationship. And I gathered all of those and continued to excel as much as I can. And as you know, after 4 years at Salesforce, I came to Zscaler to build this team again, similar practice and similar team, which I did at Salesforce. And I was really nervous about making that transition again, because I thought it's a smaller company. It's not as huge as Salesforce. It's not as well known as Salesforce. And so am I making a mistake? Am I doing something wrong? So my wife talked me out of it. And she said, what have you got to lose? You have nothing to lose here. You should only see opportunity. So always see opportunity in any crisis, any place that you are in. You may think about it as an opportunity. If you look at that, you're going to be successful. And last but not the least, I'll just end here with one final quote, which is, success is where preparation and opportunity meet. So you always have to be prepared to succeed, and prepared, and look for the opportunities, because they're everywhere. When you're prepared, when there's the right opportunity, that's when you meet. And I have a few more elements of advice for you, but I'll save it for the end. But I'll just pause here. That's my story. And I would love to kind of open up for questions.
Should I
Say it.
Yeah, go up there.
Should I just like, okay.
Yeah.
Even though you were in computer science for a short amount of time, how important do you think a background in tech is because of the growing technology influence in the business world?
Yeah, you know what? I would say one thing that don't follow what I did. I mean, again, I had a background in tech, but I never used it. But I would say that if you have the basics in the technology correct, you have some knowledge of programming and you have knowledge of how the different elements of the tech stack work, whether it's applications or infrastructure or network or you'd name it, right? So then you have an upper hand over people who are just beginning to learn. So in the tech sector, those skills are very valuable, and it depends on which path you want to take. If you want to become a product manager, it really helps in having some technology basics right. If you want to be in the technology program management, that is also important. If you want to be in the hardcore technical field, which is somewhat related to engineering fields, that's equally important. And even if you are in sales, which is kind of business and strategic selling or any other mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, just understanding of those technical elements give you a leg up any day. So you cannot go wrong with honing in your skills while you are studying at the university and technology, for sure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, sir.
I guess I have a question. I kind of missed out on the 3 things that you learned from your grandparents. Could you go back over and repeat them for me, please?
Yeah, so the 3 things that I learned from my grandparents are, one is like the principles in life matter. You should stand for something, whatever you pick. I mean, doesn't matter. You should stand for something. My grandparents stood for integrity, honesty, hard work, and caring for others. That's what they stood up for. So that's principle. That's the first thing that I learned. The second thing that I learned was we have to give respect to get respect. Sometimes just people command respect. I should be respected, but you have to give respect to get respect. And the third is that there is no substitute to hard work and education. So there is really important, and education doesn't mean that a college degree is education. The education is a constant lifelong learning that you need to be on a journey to constantly educate yourself about new things and be able to kind of adapt to what's changing in the world. So those are the 3 things that I learned.
Thank you. And I guess I have also a follow-up question on that. So in your story, you mentioned a couple of times where you had a setback. What, other than just having motivation from family, what were some other ways that you had to motivate yourself? Because I know for me, obviously I have like friends and family that I can rely and support on to get me through tough times. But is there another thing or that got you through those tough moments in your life?
Yeah, it's a very loaded question. So I would say you have to, first things first, you have to have belief in yourself. You have to have that confidence in yourself. Even if your confidence is dwindling because a result of that failure, you need to kind of pick up back yourself. So that self-belief is really important in my opinion. That self-confidence is really important in my opinion. And then the one of the books that I read very early on, and people may laugh at it because it was a self-help book. It said very early on in my college days, I read because I was going through these cycles. It was by Dale Carnegie. It's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And one of the things that I learned from there was a principle called, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? So every time I get into any kind of tough situation, I just take that as a mantra for myself. I think about it, when I was taking up this job at Zscaler, which I turned out to be really well, but I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, I won't like it, or I would lose it, and I'll be back to square one. And then I've done it so many times that I'm not afraid anymore. It is what it is. Yeah. So you have to have that self-confidence to answer your question. You have to have that self-belief, and you have to have your own pro mantra. I mean, my mantra is, what's the worst that can happen? But you can have your own, and then of course, there's no substitute to support from family, from friends, and some people who are really your network, your system, which works with you in times of um, times of successes and failures, both. Does it help?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have a question. Was your network or relationships that you built at past companies ever hindered because you were jumping companies, or were you able to rebuild the connection still, even though you were moving?
Yeah. So again, the first thing first, I mean, when I kind of think about changes that I made, the first rule was in my mind was that I never burn any bridges. So I'll give you an example. When I was leaving Salesforce at that time, I was in charge of the largest merger or acquisition that they did, which was Slack. It was a $28 billion acquisition, and I was in the thick of the things. And when I was leaving, I thought about it, and I felt about it as to, I mean, am I leaving this in the middle of it? Which arguably was not the situation, but at the same time, I felt about it. But I took extra time. I had to give a notice period of 2 weeks. I gave them a notice period of 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, I was not twiddling my thumbs. I was preparing like documents and documents about transition. I was having more busy days in those 3 weeks of notice period than I had throughout my career at Salesforce, because I wanted the team that is taking on that responsibility to want to set them up for success. So to answer your question about network, that's how you build your reputation. That's how you build your network, because you did not leave anybody hanging in the middle of that project, but rather you actually supported them in times when they were requiring that support. And I would say that at the end of that 3 weeks, the head of my entire business just sent me a note. He said that, actually, I've never seen such a transition like this before. You worked your nights and days to help make a seamless transition. We understand your decision, and we are going to be in touch at any point in time. If you want to come back to Salesforce, the door is always open. What more can you ask for? So you have to take those decisions. That's what's best for you, whether it's for your personal success or your professional success. But at the same time, you have to be respectful. You have to be respectful, and you have to put yourselves in their shoes and help them succeed while you are, parting ways as well. So, and after the fact, you keep in touch with them. You continue to ask them how things are going, where you can help. So always offer where you can help versus asking where they can help you. So that way that conversation goes well, and then you definitely are in good books of all the past employers as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So once you decided you wanted to go into business, how did you figure out what exactly you wanted to do within business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, again, for me, it was the fascination. I remember first time I went to business school was from 99 to 2001. And that was the era when a lot of startups in the US were emerging, like Yahoo to Amazon to you name it, right? Like, you may not even remember some of the names, AOL, etc., right? Like all of those startups and companies that were just booming. Internet industry was like crazily growing. So I thought that, you know what, I have a technical degree in the form of a computer science degree, and I am really fascinated by this tech business world, or business of technology, I would call it. So I decided to focus more on information systems and learning as to how do we do business side of technology versus the technical side of technology, which of course I had limited interest on, as I mentioned in my story. So that's how I decided that where do I need to focus? And then I thought that, hey, I'm really good in sales, marketing, and this information systems side of the thing. So let me have that specialization and focus on that. I sucked at finance, to be honest, but that's a story for another day. The more you run away from something, the more that something haunts you. And finance has haunted me all my career. And today I'm in majority of my profile is requiring a lot of financial acumen and skills that I had to relearn during my career because I ignored them during my business school years and focused on sales, marketing, and information systems. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I had a question. So I'm sure everyone's wondering this, but what do Big Fours look for when they're recruiting? Is there certain things of the application that are more important than others?
Yeah, big four firms, are very selective, first of all, in where they go for recruitments. So, I mean, I'm not sure if UT Dallas, I'm pretty sure UT Dallas would be one of their preferred schools, and so all the firms. So they have their own school list where they go to typically, and they have priority 1 schools and priority 2 schools, and there are slots that are open. So essentially, I mean, again, I don't want to describe the process to you guys. You may understand it better than I do at this stage of your life and career. So, but what they look for is Big Fours are big in terms of diversity of skills and diversity of people. So you may want to kind of highlight what differentiates your skills from others. They definitely are looking for business acumen. If you are looking for, so typically business acumen, technical acumen, relationship building efforts, your executive presence, your ability to communicate messages, which would be ability to communicate messages, strong messages, all of those pieces. So communication skills, business acumen, technical acumen, ability to connect and build relationships and be likable. And so they can put you in front of the clients. So they are looking for people who are confident, whom they can be putting in front of their clients and who can handle themselves, and they can stand on their own legs in front of the clients, because the clients are tough sometimes. They can ask you any questions, and they can, so how do you navigate those complexities, even if you don't know the answer? How do you kind of not dodge the question, but at the same time, how do you create that intelligent deflection, I would call it, and then come back to them with the right answer. So they're looking for some smart skills, some of those abilities as well. So and yeah, it depends on job to job as well. The Big Four are also not, I mean, if you're going for a strategy consulting job, or if you're going for a mergers and acquisition job, or if you're going for an audit and risk kind of job, there are different kinds of job. Or if you're going for a technical job within the Big Four firms, they have technology consulting practices as well. So, they're different. When I say technical acumen and business acumen, they may be differing for job profile to job profile as well. Does it answer your question?
Yeah. Does anyone have any more questions? Yes, no? What? Okay, I think those are all of the questions. Thank you so much for presenting and taking time out of your day to help us and teach us and tell us about your journey. Do you have any last comments or like pieces of advice?
Yeah, I wanted to save the best for the last, and I think advice is one thing that's free. It's available for anyone. It's a dime a dozen. It doesn't cost anything, and it just, you have to pick up and see which one you follow. So I have a few pieces of final comments to make, if you guys are okay with that, and that would summarize and synthesize some of the discussions that we had so far. Let me know if you guys are interested in hearing some other points, a few more points.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So let's talk about what I shared my stories. I hope that answered a lot of your questions that were embedded in there, and I'll just leave you with a few pieces of advice and a few pieces of suggestions as you think about your life ahead. And it may sound a bit repetitive from what I said previously, but just bear with me. But the first one that I would go with is that define your values and be true to your values. It's a loaded statement, believe me. First of all, you may or may not be at this stage of your life and career, you may not be thinking as to what are my values. And the values keep changing as you keep progressing, as you kind of progress in your life, the values may shift, but the core values still remain the same. What do you stand for? And think back after you leave this session, think about it. What are your values? And that's really important. That lays the foundation of what you're going to do ahead and go and do whatever you want to do in your life going forward. The other thing that I would say is that always remember that when the why is clear, the how is easy. It goes back to that same concept. When the why is clear, the how is easy. So you need to define the why. When you say I'm going to do this, then you need to make sure that you tell why you are doing this. You need to answer to yourself. You don't have to share it with anyone. You need to be very clear on why. The third thing that I would say is that, you guys are a sponge at the moment. You are in the university, you're surrounded, you're learning, you're growing, but this is not going to stop. As you move out of the university campus and start your first job, it will hit you hard that you know something, but you don't know a lot of things. You may know 5% of the things, but you do not know 95% of the things. As the Greek philosopher Socrates said, the more you know what you don't know. So you will never stop learning. You have to, the day you stop learning, as I said, you're dead. So that's just keep that in your mind. Just always be learning. The fourth tip that I would leave you with is be respectful to your people. Any person that you meet on your way up, because you're going to be going way up, you're going to be going up. Because you'll meet the same people on your way down. So respect begets respect. So be respectful, be nice to people. It doesn't cost anything. And remain in touch. You never know who will appear when you need the most. I've had surprises in my career. When I needed a help, somebody from days and years ago when I met with them, I reached out to them, took a while to connect, but then they came with an open arms to help with regards to whatever I needed at that time. So you never know who is going to be helping you in time of need, and not just in time of need, but who is going to be standing next to you and celebrating your success as well. So be nice to people. It's really important. Fifth one is find a mentor wherever you go. It's really important. It's really important to build those relationships wherein you are seeking mentorship, you're being open, you're understanding what the other people have to offer. And once you do that, you're going to have a lot of supporters. And sometimes, you may have heard of this, create your own personal board of directors, which means that in times of need, you can go to them. And it may not be different people for different kind of times. But you should continue to think about who can help you with personal matters, who can help you with professional matters. You have to have those trusted group of people around you so you can go back to and seek advice, seek inputs, because you cannot think all by yourself and do all by yourself. And last one for you guys, but not the least, always add value. Always add value wherever you go. Any conversation that you are in, any relationship that you are in, add value. Be an addition, not a subtraction function. Work hard, show that you care, and be prepared. Again, because success is where preparation and opportunity meet. So it's really important for you to just embrace some of these if these resonate. And I'll leave you with some book recommendations, and this is shared file, so you can access it later. I don't want to bore you with the details, but some of these books have changed my thinking and my life in a different direction. And I hope some of these you may have already read, and some of these you may want to read and get inspired. So with that, I'll just like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with this brilliant group of people. And happy to help in any shape and form if you need any other discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to me. Hi. Okay, thank you for doing this. I think the session is over. If anyone's interested in the recording, my uncle did record it, so we can do that. And then, do you want to leave any contact information, like a LinkedIn or like an email that people can reach out to?
Yeah, you can, LinkedIn is pretty easy these days. So you can just search my name, Akshay Grover. So, and it's www.linkedin.com/in/Akshay Grover, one word. And you'll find me there. And now you've seen me on screen, so you won't miss the picture. There's a picture out there as well. So you won't connect with another Akshay Grover there, but hopefully you find the right one. So happy to connect and happy to help if you need any other support. Thank you, Arsha. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Do you leave?